Santel was through, finished. He was going back to cattle country. Crouched beside the narrow stream of snow water, he stirred impatiently. He could return now. Eva was out of his thoughts, gone from his mind. The wounds were healed over, and there remained only the leavening caution. But it had taken over a year to work her out of his system and wipe the memory of her from his mind, and the towering, silent Colorado mountains had been just the place to accomplish it. Eva, who was once meant all things to him, who had led him on and made him believe there was no other, and then, one day, had brushed him lightly aside and married Tom Fallon, his best friend. That same night he had climbed into his saddle and moved on, drifting with each change of the wind, coming finally to the hill country where he substituted a quest of gold for his fine dreams of Eva, and vowed to himself daily in the vast, limitless silence that no woman would ever again lead him on and play him for a sucker. He straightened up, a tall, rangy man in typical Western dress with wide, powerful shoulders and a strong, square-cut face. The muscles of his legs, turned sharp by countless hunkerings along innumerable creeks in his fruitless search for yellow metal, twinged in protest. It stirred a deep growl of anger within him, and a temper flared through his frame. In a hasty, frustrated motion, he flung his prospecting pan into the brush, setting up a chatter that sent half a dozen blue-coated camp robbers flapping for the nearest tree. He swung his glance toward a plume of smoke rising from beyond the hogback to the east. A town lay there, Sutterville, a passing pilgrim had informed him, a place where miners could buy supplies. He wheeled away from the stream, and his mind definitely made up. He would go there, dispose of his meager equipment, and strike out for Texas, for the Llanos Estacados, the staked plains country. That's where he belonged, in a broad, rimless land where he could feel the hot sun on his back, the clean wind on his face. When the nights were warm and soft and not bitter and laden with ice that cut a man to the bone. He was not cut out to be a miner, grubbing in the dirt or slopping around in the water. He needed the feel of a good horse working between his knees and the music of cattle bawling in his ears. Swiftly he collected his belongings, tied them in his bedroll. He caught up with a hobbled buckskin, fat as a Christmas pig on Colorado's sweet grass, and saddled him. In a few minutes he was aboard, pointing straight for the wisps of smoke trickling skyward, first to Sutterville, then eastward across the New Mexico flats to Texas. That's the beginning of Outlaw Marshal by Ray Hogan. I've got it on Kindle. I think if I hold it sideways here, you can see the cover. It's called Outlaw Marshal by Ray Hogan. That was the opening chapter. The story is about mainly three men. Clay Santel, which is who I read about there, who's given up a woman that he was in love with, who turned on him and made him give up on women altogether, and who decided that he doesn't want to pan for gold anymore, and he's going to move on to Texas where he can live in better weather and maybe get into raising cattle or something like that. So he's just making his way to Texas, and that's what his goal is. The other two men that come into play are Harry Deckett, who is a man who claims to be a U.S. Marshal, but he's actually just a part-time deputy that happened on to capturing Shotgun Travers, who's like the main villain in this, sort of. And what happens is that, and this is not giving anything away, this happens right at the beginning of the story. Harry Deckett, posing as a marshal, is taking Shotgun Travers to Colorado to turn him in for a reward and watch him probably be hanged. And long story short, Shotgun Travers gets away from him and hides because he knows the country a lot better than Deckett does. because Deckett's never been that way before, but Shotgun Travers had. So he goes and he ends up in Sutterville, that town where Clay Santel was headed. And it turns out when you first hear about Shotgun Travers, the point is that he looks a lot like Clay Santel. And that's something that comes into play, the fact that they look like each other. Uh, Santel has come into the town. He just wants to rest his horse, sell off his mining supplies, and get some provisions to take with him to on his way to Texas. Uh, Deckett comes into the town and is looking for Travers, thinking maybe he came there. He sees Deckett, or Deckett sees Santel and says, you know, that could almost be Shotgun Travers. And then he looks again and he's like, no, that's not him. But then all the people in the town start talking about this stranger that showed up right about the time the Marshal, in quotes, Deckett, has come looking for a stranger. And the way he described him fits the description of Clay Santel. So they see him, and Deckett devises this plan that he's just going to say that Santel is Shotgun Travers, and they're going to take him out, fake him trying to get away again, and kill him, and say that it's him, and have the people of the town of Sutterville attest to it, and then collect his reward and get his notoriety so that maybe he can become a real marshal. That all takes place in the first 2 to 3 chapters of the book. That first chapter that I read you is the only time that there's not action happening in the story. This thing is a fast-paced, really chase book, or you call it a chase movie if it was a movie, and it absolutely gets a hold of you right at the beginning and doesn't let go till the end. I've just happened upon this during my browsings on Amazon, and it didn't give much of a description of it, but I read a few things about Ray Hogan. Yeah, can't do that. And I thought, well, I'll give him a shot. It was only a couple of bucks on Kindle, and I'd never read Ray Hogan before, but man, I tell you, this guy can tell a story. It absolutely was a fast-paced, hard-hitting Western, and you never see what's coming next. So you've got Santel on the run from a fake U.S. Marshal who's bound and determined to kill him, who's got a posse after him, and they all are intent on killing him on sight. And this guy doesn't even know why. He has no idea of anything but that he has to get away from them. And it's all the different obstacles he comes into, and another woman comes into play, and I don't want to say too much about her because it's interesting how she comes into the story. And he just absolutely, the whole time, is in immediate peril for his life for something he doesn't know anything about. And all this time, you've also got the real Shotgun Travers out there, and who knows what he's doing or where he is. So it just was an excellent, excellent novel. Whether you're a fan of fast-paced stories, chase stories, or Westerns in general, even if you're not, and think, I'd like to try out a Western, this Outlaw Marshal by Ray Hogan is excellent. And it's very fast-paced. It's only about 200 pages, so you can get through it in 2 afternoons. I did. I didn't want to put it down. I just didn't have enough time to finish it in one sitting. But conceivably, if you had a full day, you probably could. But it's very fast paced, excellent characters. All of them are well developed. Some, even the members of the posse, you get to come to know and dislike. Uh, you never know what's going to happen next. They're on the run the whole time. Excellent, excellent story. I can't recommend it enough. Uh, so far on this June on the Range, this has probably been my favorite book that I've read in the Western genre. And we've only got one more week of June on the Range, so we'll see what happens. But this has been a favorite of mine, and I am definitely going to be reading more of Ray Hogan's books because it was just excellent from start to finish. You got right into the story, right into who the characters were, and it followed them swiftly through the story, and everything was just excellent. Well told story, good writer, gets right to the point. Uh, in a similar way, I guess, kind of to Elmore Leonard that I talked about, I believe, last time. And just really terse writing, very good. And I hope that if you give anything a chance for June on the Range, check out Outlaw Marshal. It's only a couple of bucks on Kindle, and it won't take you that long to read. And it's an excellent, excellent story, an excellent Western. It would make a good movie. I don't know if it ever has been made one, but if it hasn't, it should be. But thank you for hanging out with me this week, and we'll have one more week of June on the Range next week, and I'll see you then.